All right, and welcome to Saturday Balance. We've got one drop today. We are going to be talking NASCAR here in just a moment with Steve Wilson, editor-in-chief of Speedway Digest, and our official NASCAR contributor. The trucks and the Cup Series are up in Michigan. The O'Reilly Parts Series has the week off. And also, it's Bob Burrito Automotive Group 500 out in St. Louis. IndyCar, Tony Donahue, our official IndyCar contributor, is out there in St. Louis. We're catching up with him tomorrow. So be ready for that drop. And then on Monday, we're going to be talking with Adam Jividin, our partner in crime with the show, college football, and across the board on everything. We're going to be bringing up World Cup. That's right. And Adam's is our resident soccer expert. So we're going to bring him on for that for the World Cup, as well as the NBA Finals are underway. So we got the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. So don't let your heart be troubled. There's a lot of sports to be covered over the next 3 days. But this is chapter one. Steve Wilson, editor-in-chief of Speedway Digest. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Trying to stay
Good.
away from the rain.
you, you've had enough rain over the last few weeks. That's for sure. I get it. I totally understand. Well, it's also D-Day, June 6th, 82 years ago. The beaches of Normandy were stormed, and I was talking with you a little bit offline here. My grandfather was in D-Day, and my grandfather and grandmother never met till after the war. So it does put it in perspective. I've got 2 children and 3 grandchildren, and just the legacy that spun off from him. So, really, what we do here is just a freedom that we have. The freedom that we have and enjoy are those who didn't come back from Normandy, and the importance of D-Day. But man, and I was reading a stat too that the average, I think that was about how old my grandfather was. I'm not totally sure, but the average soldier storming the beaches was 19 years old. So, wow, big salute to all the World War II veterans. And there's not many of them left. And so, if you see a guy with a World War II veteran hat on, give him a hug his shoulder, and do what you should be doing. I will digress from that before I lose composure. So let's talk. We're going to talk a little bit about obviously one of the things that has happened here recently, Steve, and I'm going to lean on you here for this as well. But we are deeply saddened that the news that hit the garage area this week, the racing community collectively is mourning the passing of a true mountaintop legend. Gentleman Ned Jarrett, as they called him, passed away peacefully of natural causes at his home in Newton, North Carolina, at the age of 93. Ned Jarrett, of course, Dale Jarrett's father, and I remember having an opportunity to meet him here in Indianapolis. They actually had an opportunity to race each other in Indianapolis before, so it was good to meet him. And Ned was the nicest guy in the world, just like his son is. But what made Ned so legendary wasn't that what he did inside the cockpit, but when he hung up the helmet, he stepped into the broadcast booth for CBS and completely pioneered on how we watch modern racing. Every single race fan remembers the iconic tear-stained moment when he called his own son, Dale Jarrett, victory at the 1993 Daytona 500. He treated everyone with respect, and he earned his nickname 1,000 times over, and was the second-year inductee into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. We mourn the loss of Ned Jarrett. Steve, I know you've got some memories of Ned Jarrett. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. He's somebody that is really just a legend within the sport. Won the championship twice in '61 and '65. You know, it's kind of how do you put into words, a career such as Ned Jarrett, and he pioneered a lot in the early days of the sport with 50 victories and something like 183 top tens. I actually looked this up the other day or yesterday when it happened for something for a story, and it's just somebody with just a limited career like he had was able to win the championship twice and 50 victories, 183 top tens. That's just and just an impeccable career before he moved on into the broadcast world. And you go back and you look at those old CBS and some of those early telecasts like that had him, Denny Parsons, and those
Mhm.
guys that are up in the booth, and they're all back up there now, probably calling them one heck of a race up there
Yeah.
somewhere. Um, then
And
those
Kyle
guys.
Busch is in that race.
Oh yeah, he's probably in the race with them up in the booth somewhere calling this thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, you know, I, I remember that call when in the Daytona 500 in which Dale Jarrett won the 500, and I was actually reading yesterday one of the producers from that who's actually still around in this sport, even from the 90s, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand is that some of these people are actually still around. um, they were talking, they told a story on there how the executive producer for this for the telecast on that had hit the all call button and told everybody basically to shut up and let him call the race to
Yes.
the end. Just let him do his thing, because and it was kind of an impactful moment. And um the next week they go, I think they said that they had gone to Rockingham the next week, and Ned Jarrett had walked over to Dale Earnhardt, because this was the Dale and Dale show. And he walked over to Dale Earnhardt and made a comment to him, like, hey, sorry about that, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm sure you saw the telecaster, made some comment along those natures. And Dale Sr. responded back to him saying, well, I'm a dad too, so I get it. So, it's
Yeah, exactly.
that that's just kind of the rapport that Ned had with a lot of these drivers out there, that he never tried to step on somebody's toes, and he really was kind of that gentleman out there that we saw him to be. And I've had others that have told stories to me that were doing. I think I told you this a little bit.
Mm.
A friend of mine was doing some research on Hickory Motor Speedway, and Ned Jarrett invited him in, and just took the time to tell him the history of Hickory Motor Speedway, his time out there at Hickory, and really helped him out with his research. So that was just kind of the person he was, to try and help people out and bring them into to his home, and to his universe, and just try and help people as much as possible.
Absolutely, and just what a sad passing of Ned Jarrett. But he lived a good life, and he's certainly a legend in the sport. And he will be forever remembered. Well, let's get into it, man. Let's we're going fast and heavy, because NASCAR world was absolutely spinning on its axis right now. It was a crazy, and I know you were down there in Nashville. It was a wild, hot, exhausting triple header down in Music City at Nashville Speedway, and I watched a little bit of it, and I tell you, if you want to race there where you can, you got to cover the kids' ears and scream at the TV if you weren't at the race. That race was definitely not disappointing. So before we go into the Pure Speed Michigan race this weekend, let's talk about what went down in the Cracker Barrel 400. Denny Hamlin, love or hate him, absolutely backed up the heavy hitting Betty Nods. He showed up, dominated, and grabbed his second victory of the season, extending his career high streak to 8 top 10 finishes at Michigan, I guess. At Nashville, sorry. Nonetheless, I'm all over the board here today. But what were your thoughts about the Cracker Barrel 400? I know that's your favorite place to eat. I say with sarcastically, and Denny Hamlin getting that.
Well, Denny had said earlier in the weekend that he had been looking for a win at that place. He had tried to win it so many different times out there, and he overcame. You go back and you look at the very start of that race out there, in which he drew a penalty right on the first lap, before even the first lap started. he uh, he rushed the green flag and restarted, so he got a restart penalty on that. Had to do a pass through penalty. Spent a good majority of the race trying to work himself back up in there. Watched a lot of other guys out there. Tyler Reddick at one point was very strong into this. Christopher Bell was strong into this. Chase Briscoe was real strong into this. And there's a lot of them that would, unfortunately, Reddick himself, he got taken out of the race.
Yeah.
But and then there were so many others that were really strong throughout the race that got taken out. But It came down to him, Denny, Briscoe, and Bell, three JGR cars out there, battling this thing down to the very end, swapping back and forth. And, he finally was able to get that win out there. I know that there was a lot of, you watch that race out there and you go back and watch kind of the last couple of laps out there. I will, what I will say, and one of my takeaways from this is that look, this was a 300-mile race out there, and it took like
Hmm.
4 hours to run. And Denny
Yes.
Hamlin, Denny Hamlin, even days after his win or day after his win, like something like Monday or Tuesday, said that 4 hours is way too long to run a race. And I have to tend to agree with him on that.
Yeah.
Even
Mhm.
though here's the winner of the race saying, look, this race was way too long, and I think we have to find. I don't think we necessarily have to cut races down because there are some races out there that the Daytona 500, the Southern 500, the Coca-Cola 600, they're crown jewel events. I don't necessarily think that they need to be cut down in length. We can probably look at some other races, but I think we need, as Denny said, I think we need to look at ways and find ways, whether it's through processes or procedures. You go look at the shot clock in the NBA, you look at the pitch clock in the MLB, you look at all these different sports out there that are trying to, bring, these sports into a 2.5, 3 hour kind of window just because of, attention spans out there. And even the NFL, in a lot of ways, is trying to find ways to do this. And I think he's right that we had 4 hours to run that
Right.
race, and that's the longest race that we've had out there. And that's
Yeah.
typically a 4 hour race is typically what it would take something to run the Southern 500, and not to. I mean, the Coca-Cola 600 had it run all the way to conclusion is about 4 hours and 25 minutes, 4 hours and 20 minutes. So we're running a 600-mile race in 20 minutes more. So I think Denny's kind of right in that
Yeah.
we have to find ways, whether it's processes or procedures that will shorten these races down, and not necessarily always just looking at the fact of just cutting the race length down.
Well, if you want entertainment, you need to look back over to the O'Reilly race. I mean, let's be real there. The biggest talking point on social media all weekend wasn't even the Cup race. It really was the O'Reilly Auto Parts series on Saturday night, when a YouTube automotive legend, Cletus McFarland. I know we talked a little bit about him and how much fun it was going to have him out there on the track. Rolled onto the grid into the power. In a powerhouse Richard Childress Petty racing Chevy. He qualified 37 right next to Kyle Larson, and watching those two carve up the field on really a concrete bumpy oval was just entertaining, and it was exactly the kind of fun outside the box wild card energy that the sport really needs. So if we're looking for entertainment and an entertaining race, I would venture to say that was one we put up for an example. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Cletus came in about a year or so ago, and he's been pretty entertaining to watch throughout this in NASCAR. He wants to be able to run some of these bigger races. He qualified actually on the pole yesterday in Michigan, his first career pole in the ARCA Series race. He'll have another shot at it. I don't know if Truck Series qualifying is done, but he's going to be in that race again today. But I mean, he's been pretty entertaining throughout his. He spun, I think, twice out there by himself, but he kept that thing going, and
Yes.
he seems to be pretty entertaining.
Well, all right. Well, let's move on up north now from Tennessee to the Irish Hills of Michigan. I've been to that track a few times. It's a fun track. It's out in the. It's one like Iowa. It's really out in the middle of nowhere. It's not really like in a town. You're driving, and boom, there it is. And it's a super speedway. It's a fast speedway. I don't know if you've ever been up there or not, Steve, but we've got the trucks. And we've got the ARCA, which I believe has already been canceled because of rain. So we are going to be dealing with rain again up there in Michigan. We got the trucks today; they're rolling off. I believe we've got a qual. Let me just double check here. You probably already have this information. Uh, yeah, so Ty Majeski, he is on the pole up there at Michigan. I like Ty. We don't talk a lot about the trucks for no particular reason, just for essence of time. But the O'Reilly series is off today, so let's break down the truck series where we're at. And Ty's a very good, strong racer, and I suspect that his time in the truck races and being promoted is probably sooner than later. Go ahead.
well, he's won the championship, in Truck Series, and but don't look too far. Right beside him is going to be Christopher Bell back in this thing.
Yes.
He's been playing around a little bit in the Truck Series here as of recently in that Hallmark factory team. Good Lord, I can't. I I have trouble sometimes saying their name, but
You're just like me. It's fine.
uh, but it's really this year has really been Lane Riggs. He won in Charlotte. He won last week in Nashville. He's really leading. Between him, I think it really comes down between him and Caden Honeycutt. The two of those have really been the ones out there that week in and week out. I think this thing with no Corey Heim in the field now, and now as far as the championship is concerned, Corey Heim is starting 20th or 20. I'm sorry, 23rd today. But with no Corey Heim to battle out there for the points championship, it's really come down to Lane Riggs and Caden Honeycutt, and Caden is kind of an interesting story because last year while racing for the championship and while he was locked into that final rounds later in the year, he was cut loose by his team and had to find somebody else that was willing to take him on. And the Hallmark team was, excuse me, the Hallmark team was able to put him in the truck. So then we now see him over at Tricon, kind of taking up the mantle from Corey Heim, who had vacated or that truck at the end of last year after winning the championship. But he's kind of an interesting story about how it all came to be of him being in this this Toyota this year for Tricon Racing after getting cut loose in the midst of a championship run last year in the Truck Series.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about as we roll into the Cup race. So we got some time to talk about the Cup race. This is going to be a powerhouse matchup, if you will, between Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin, both former winners. They're both scrapping at the top of the leaderboard. And then, of course, you look at Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Ty Gibbs, all people that we're going to be watching on our watch list tomorrow. A little bit different if how you're used to watching the Cup Series is you can watch it on Prime, you can watch it on HBO Max. I'm not knowing if it's on Fox or not, but I do know it's you got to look around a little bit different streams. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but let's talk about the Cup race tomorrow there in Michigan, sir.
Well, this is a fast, wide open track out there in Michigan. If you look at the ARCA race, and I'm just kind of referencing the ARCA race, the ARCA race yesterday had not had a natural caution in 3 years. Yesterday was the first time that when Daniel Dye spun in this race that it had a natural caution in 3 years. So this is something that the teams have to kind of be mindful of tomorrow in this race, because you do get these long green flag runs, and it's so wide open. It is so fast. It's kind of like the old Auto Club Speedway where you can hit 200 plus miles an hour on the straightaways at the end of the front straightaway out there. So you get these high speeds out there, but you also get these really long green flag runs out there throughout these races. So this is just not only a battle of just longevity in these green flag runs, but also dealing with these high speeds for a considerable amount of time. So I think that's what teams have to look for. I don't think I think if you go back to last week, there was a lot of brake failures and things like that. You're not going to see any of that this week in Michigan, just because of the nature of the race, that you're really just not using the brakes a whole lot throughout it. So tires won't be a concern either. It's just you're going to see a lot of high speed action out there. Unfortunately, not the pack style racing that you kind of be normally used to. It's like a Daytona or a Talladega, but there's a lot that's just going to go into these green flag runs, and you're going to see a lot of the battling, especially for position in these green flag runs, is you're going to see them on pit road, because those are going to be where you're going to be able to make up some of these positions. And Last week, you could pick up positions both on the racetrack and on pit road, depending on with the pit cycles the way that they were. But really, your mistakes on pit road will win or lose you this race on Sunday tomorrow.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a couple other drivers. Daniel Suarez, fresh off his massive emotional crown jewel victory at the Coca-Cola 600, the week before, he locked himself right into the top 10 in points. Meanwhile, and this is what I find interesting. I don't know if there's something behind the scenes going on here with his team, with his car, but Kyle Larson is sitting in sixth place with 409 points, but he's currently riding a massive 37 race winless streak in points paying races. I mean, let's see if the change of scenery can snap that drop, because we're just not used to seeing this type of Kyle Larson at this time of the year.
No, you really haven't. 35, where I think we're like 35 or 37 races at this point that he's gone without going to victory. And he does also discuss this last week in Nashville, where he has gone even, he feels like after the 2 years in Indy and kind of the disappointments there, that he went back and he started looking at some of his win streaks out there, that he went from winning about 30% of the races to between 10 and 20% of the races in the sprint cars that he was racing in. And then when you go over to the Cup Series, it's even lower than that. It's in the single digits. I mean, he was used to being up front and being able to win and contend for these races, but as a whole, I think, Chevrolet, I don't think it's all him. He knows how to win. He hasn't forgotten how to win. Chevrolet as a whole, outside of Spire, has struggled a little bit with this car over the last year or so since they introduced this body. Or small redesigns to the body. They've all struggled out there. William Byron, same kind of deal. Hasn't been to victory lane either. Chase Elliott is the only one in that camp right now that's been to victory lane for the Hendrick Motorsports teams. But it's really been like Spire Motorsports, who gets a lot of their technology, a lot of their engines and things like that from Hendrick. Those are the ones I've seen to figure something out. They've put Carson Hocevar and they put Daniel Suarez both in victory lane over there. So while both teams are using they're using the same engines, they're using the same technologies, one team has figured it out somehow where the other team is still kind of struggling. And, you're just not used to that with the Hendrick Motorsports outside of Chase Elliott. And I think right now Chase is kind of leading that team for them, and this is something that I think we have to watch. I think you have to continue even looking back. And I know that we talked about that we're at this point in the year where we start talking about Alex Bowman once again. Will Alex Bowman be in this car next year? And somehow he ends up breaking through with a win somewhere as we start having these conversations, and then he returns the car the next year. But I think there's a lot going on at Hendrick Motorsports at this moment, especially with the Kyle Larson down as far as he is without a win. William Byron also kind of in the same boat, just not as far back as without a win. And Chase Elliott leading the way. And then, with Alex Bowman having to be out of the car a couple of weeks this year, does that factor into, even if he does break through with a win and kind of, put himself in a situation where he can get, necessarily maybe get into this, new chase format, but without kind of those barriers that would give him the opportunity to run well. I just don't know. I think there's a lot going on, and once again, you see a team like Spire who's figured something out with this car using the same technology and the same engines that Hendrick Motorsports is, whereas the other one hasn't.
We're talking with Steve Wilson, editor-in-chief of Speedway Digest.com and our official NASCAR contributor. A little final thoughts here before we got to wrap it up and put a bow on it. You've got Toyota and you got Ford turf war going on up there in Michigan. This track is basically in Ford's backyard, but Toyota has been a heat-seeking missile lately. Again, going back to Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin, back-to-back winners there at Michigan 2024, and the defending winner 2025 is Denny Hamlin. And then also keep an eye and a close eye on the young Ty Gibbs, a massive dark horse. He has posted back-to-back third place finishes at Michigan over the last two appearances, and his engine program has the exact top end speed required to draft past veterans down the massive backstretch. So, final thoughts there. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Uh, yeah, I mean, the earlier this year, when you look at Toyota as a whole, you look at 23XI, you look at Joe Gibbs Racing, you go back and you look at last week where you had three Joe Gibbs Racing cars out there battling up there for that race win. These are the teams that right now are the ones that we're going to talk about. Ford has just struggled. They have continued to struggle. And then you have the Chevrolet teams that we've already talked about outside of Carson Hocevar and Daniel Suarez, Aspire Motorsports as a whole, who seems to have figured something out. Yeah, this is going to become a battle of the wits between the OEMs for sure. Ford really wants that manufacturer's trophy that's handed out at the end of the weekend to the manufacturer who wins this race in Michigan, and they want to take that back home right to their corporate headquarters right down the road. Chevrolet too. They're based up there right in Detroit too. They would love to be able to take this thing home too. So, if Toyota is able to break through and they take that thing back to Texas where they're located at now, that's going to be a major
It's going
heartbreak
to
and
be huge.
upset too. Yeah.
So, real quickly here, I meant to bring this up earlier, but Kevin Mechanism will pilot the Trackhouse's Racing Project 91 entry at the Naval Base in Coronado on June 21st. So they got him a ringer from the F1 to race out there in Coronado. I'm really looking forward. I wish I could go to that race, but I'm really looking forward to watching that race. Are you going to be able to head out there into Coronado, California, to that Naval Base race, Steve?
I will not be going to Coronado. I have already pre-planned something, but
I got you.
that would be pretty cool. They've already started setting up the stands out there for this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just last week, we in Nashville, Justin Marks and Trackhouse Racing was actually just talking about this. They kind of tease this announcement just a little bit to say, hey, somebody asked the question to them about, hey, what's going on with this whole Project 91 thing? Is it still a thing? What's going on with it? Do you
Uh-huh.
have any plans for it? Whatever. And they tease like, hey, just wait. We've got something coming.
Something
You
big
just
is
wait.
on the way. Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be
Yes.
exciting to see that. I'm really looking forward to that race. Steve Wilson, editor in chief of Speedway Digest, joins us for our Saturday drop, talking some NASCAR up there in Michigan. And again, we'll be catching up with Tony tomorrow, who's out in St. Louis for the IndyCar. And then again on Monday, we have our beginning our conversation with World Cup and the NBA Finals. And you YouTuber guys, here's the thing, there's this whole chapter there for our podcast. So if you YouTube, you're on our YouTube, just hit the podcast. Every podcast that we've ever done is now archived on the YouTube podcast channel right there on our channel. So just go to the YouTube Balance Sports, subscribe. And I'm also doing something now on the weekends because everybody knows, Steve, I'm a world famous chef. Last week I did my pulled pork step by step on the YouTube. However, I've got my daughter is my behind the scene advisor. She's like, Dad, you probably might want to just put it all together and share a bunch of different videos. So we're going to do it all together. But tonight, sir, they're in for a treat. I am going to be doing on the balance cooking, world famous cooking. I'm doing fajitas with a very special marinade skirt steak that has been marinating, still marinating, and it will have been marinated 24 hours, almost 26 hours before I put it on the smoker. So if you're on our YouTube, step in and watch it. Are you a master chef like me, a barbecue chef, Steve?
Yes, I have just about every cooking, smoker, everything that you can think of, and yeah, I can.
I I love it. My son, he's in the Marines, and he's like, well, it's okay to be world famous, but I'm internationally famous because he's got a lot of buddies in the Marines spread out all over the world. And my son-in-law, I think their address is 543 something. I won't give the whole address, but He's like, yeah, I'm 543 famous. And my granddaughter, she goes, Grandpa, everything you make is world famous. I know, right? I said, well, what else? So we're having fun with it on the YouTube channel. Check it out. And make sure if you are on the YouTube, put all your comments there. We're on every social media outlet. Anywhere you could get the podcast, the A podcast, we're there. So we're among the elite, but who makes us elite are people like Steve. We appreciate you joining us. Where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
Well, you can follow us on X. You can follow us on X at Speedway Digest, Facebook.com/Speedway Digest, and SpeedwayDigest.com. And here's something really interesting coming out of Arrow McLaren. They've just announced that Ryan Hunter-Ray is the new sporting director for them.
Oh, nice. Cool. I've not seen that yet. So I saw some things pop up on my X here while I was on the phone with you, on the phone, on the show here with you. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for letting us know that. All right, Steve, you have a good race weekend. Enjoy your weekend at home. Not chasing race cars up in Michigan and not having to battle the rain, sir.
Thank you.
All right.